Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 231. On this episode of the podcast, Jen talks with Ariel Garten about how meditation can be your key to career success. You can still send emails as long as there are no attachments.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm your host, Jen Swanson. This is the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Careers by Jen is a listener-sponsored podcast, and if you like the content, please consider supporting the show as a patron. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. Head over to careersbyjen.com and click on support to learn more. Welcome to episode 231. My guest today is Ariel Garten, and she is probably one of the most interesting people you will meet. She is a psychotherapist, a neuroscientist, a mom, a former fashion designer, and the female founder and visionary of an amazing and highly successful tech startup, Muse, which we'll talk about in the interview. When Ariel is not reading brains, literally, or investing in, inspiring, and advising other startups and women in business, you can find her on stages across the world. She inspires people to understand that they can accomplish anything they want by learning what goes on in their own mind. And one thing we didn't even get into in this conversation is that Ariel is also the co-host of a podcast called the Untangle podcast. There were so many things I wanted to talk about with Ariel and just not enough time to get them all in. She was that interesting. Here is our conversation. I hope you enjoy. So Ariel Garten, meditation seems like a hot topic these days, but it's an ancient practice. And my question is, why now?
Why now? That's a great question. And I started creating a tool for meditation about a decade ago. And at that point, meditation was just not popular. People weren't talking about it. They weren't doing it. And all of a sudden in 2013, meditation was on the front cover of Time magazine. And that really began this sort of tipping point where people would come out of the closet to talk about their meditation practices. Prior to then, if I met somebody who meditated, it would be like, do you meditate? And the other person would be like, yes, do you? We're like, yes, great, then we can talk about it. Before it was, this weird, fringy thing. And then there really was this volume of papers that were published validating meditation from a scientific perspective. There was all the evidence that came out of Jon Kabat-Zinn and his mindfulness-based stress reduction meditation movement. You were starting to see big CEOs doing it, athletes doing it, actors doing it, so people began to talk about it very publicly. And then healthcare systems began to get on board. People started to recognize, wow, meditation can make change in healthcare. Then school systems came on board. And then at this point, you've got such a groundswell of both the evidence of its efficacy and, people doing it that it's kind of, we've reached the tipping point.
And so it has been around for centuries. And yet there seem to be different methodologies and different ways of doing it. And I know we're going to talk about how this can be your key to career success. But is there a particular type of meditation that seems to be in, the latest thing, the top one that people are gravitating toward, or?
That's a great question. So starting all the way back with the definition of meditation, because most people are like, meditation's this weird thing. I don't really know what it is. Do you just let your mind go blank and then it's magic? That's not what it is. So the common definition of meditation is a practice or a training that leads to healthy and positive mind states. So it's a practice that you do regularly that improves your mental state. There are many forms of meditation. You might have heard of transcendental meditation, which is mantra-based, Zen meditation, concentration meditation, walking meditation, mindfulness meditation. Some of the more popular ones are the more quote-unquote secular ones these days. So focused attention training or concentration meditation is often the first meditation practice that most people will learn. And when you do a focused attention meditation, what you do is you place your attention on something neutral, usually your breath. Your mind begins to wander. You then notice that your mind has wandered, and you choose, instead of following your wandering mind, to bring your attention back to your breath. And when you do so, some pretty cool things happen. One is you're able to take your mind out of your wandering thoughts. And the other thing is that you're able to choose where your mind goes and then strengthen your attention. So we'll talk a lot more about that as it evolves, but focused attention practice is kind of the most common one you see now. And transcendental is in some ways a form of it. And, in a focused attention practice, you can focus on a candle, you can focus on a breath, you can focus on parts of your body, so long as you're maintaining your attention on a single point and then tracking your mind as it moves.
So I've had some experience with meditation over the years. When I was 12, my mother took me into a TM, Transcendental Meditation Center, and I was given a mantra and all the rest. And of course I was 12, and that was a long time ago, in the 60s or 70s, I guess. And I thought it was kind of odd, but it ended up being something that was very grounding for me through my teen years. And then I try to do a practice almost every day of centering prayer, or I guess a form of mantra meditation around a spiritual word. But I also took a free course through Mind Valley not that long ago. It was not quiet. It was called the 6th phase, and it was all these different things to focus on throughout the 20 minutes. And I just wonder about that kind of thing. Where would that fall in the category?
So I don't know the particular methodology that you're referring to, but there are lots of different ways to observe the mind and lots of different practices that you can do to exercise your observation and change your relationship with your mind and your body. So I don't know specifically that one.
Okay. So when we're talking about career, how can any type of meditation, how can that help you in your career and then in your life?
So this practice of meditation ends up having a host of benefits in your life, many of which confer benefits in your career. So one of the first things that you might notice when you begin to meditate is that you feel less stressed. You feel calmer. God, could we all use that in the workplace?
No kidding.
So one of the reasons that you feel calmer or less stressed is because you are able to change the relationship to your stressful thoughts. So in the focused attention practice that I described, your mind wanders. Often your mind wanders onto negative, frustrating thoughts that are repetitive and not very useful. And what you do in meditation is, instead of following those wandering thoughts as you're used to and having your head filled with stressful negative things, you instead choose to take your mind off those thoughts and place them onto something neutral. And when you do that and you change the relationship to your thoughts and you start to become the master of the content of your own mind, it really frees you up to do whatever you want with your brain space. So instead of the repeated thought of like, oh no, that email from my boss that I need to get back to, oh no, oh no, oh no, you can now start to shift that thinking towards useful and productive things in your own mind.
And what's happening in your brain when you're meditating?
So there's a host of changes that can actually happen inside your brain during meditation. So we have two primary parts of our brain that are interacting during our daily life. One is the prefrontal cortex. That is the attentional control center. That's our higher order processing. And the other is our amygdala, which is our fight or flight response. You have lots of other parts of your brain that are very important, but during the meditation process, we start to see changes in these two regions. So the amygdala is the thing that's going about and labeling things as dangerous. And this was super helpful back in the day when we lived in a very dangerous world with fires and snakes and things that could get us. These days, our amygdala doesn't have, that many dangers immediately present in front of it. So it instead attaches to things that it perceives as dangerous, but aren't really, like, oh no, the wrinkle in my pants before this big meeting, or, oh no, like, did I get the colors right? Are they going to love my report or not? And so our amygdala keeps firing, being like, this thing's really important. We need to feel stressed about it. And in a meditation practice, what part of what you're doing is bringing in your prefrontal cortex, your attentional control center, and having a shifted relationship to what's going on in your amygdala. So you bring in your higher order processing, your metacognition, and this actually allows your prefrontal cortex to send a message down to your amygdala to say, like, hey, you might be freaking out now, but actually everything's fine. I can rise above the scenario. I can see the landscape. I can see that everything's fine, and you can just calm right down. And what we see in long-term meditators is both a decreased activity in the amygdala, and in some long-term meditators, actually a decrease in the size of the amygdala. And in another study by Dr. Sarah Lazar, she looked at the prefrontal cortex of long-term meditators and was able to demonstrate that a long-term meditator can maintain or enhance the thickness of their prefrontal cortex as they age. And so you're seeing this really nice relationship between the sort of wise, parental center of your brain coming online and the anxious flipping out self decreasing.
And the anxious flipping out self, I mean, its whole purpose is to keep you safe, right?
Yes, its whole purpose is to keep you safe, to warn you about things that are important, all of which are incredibly relevant. But in most of us, that amygdala is on hyperdrive, and it's constantly causing us stress in areas where we don't really need to have it.
And so can the brain differentiate between real situations and pretend situations? For example, if you're watching a television show?
Yes, in a lot of cases, that's the job of the prefrontal cortex. And so sometimes we forget and we watch a television show and we get freaked out ourselves. But in those scenarios, you can usually bring in your prefrontal cortex or higher order processing, look at the scenario and say, hey, that's not me, that's over there. Actually, I'm safe. But until we do that step, we can be really sucked in.
So the practice of meditation and long term, what would that be defined as?
So in one study by Eileen Luter, she looked at the changes in the brain of a long-term meditator, and she defined a long-term meditator as somebody who's meditated for 5 years or more. And I reference the study because it's really cool. So in a long-term meditator, somebody who's meditated by 5 years or more, she saw that their brain looked like it was 7.5 years younger than a non-meditator.
Wow. So there you go.
Pretty good investment of time. Yeah.
How to get younger in 20 minutes a day. So I should ask you about that time frame. I mean, I've always been told 20 minutes twice a day is optimal. Is that the latest thinking?
So a lot of the studies have been done on 10 or 20 minutes per day. And so you can see effect in 10 or 20 minutes per day. 20 minutes per day is typically what studies are done on. With Muse, we have done a number of studies with individuals meditating for 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes up to 20. And there we've seen changes in cognitive function and ability, decrease in stress, change in relationship to the body, etc.
That's amazing that little amount of time. I mean, 10 minutes is sometimes what you're spending waiting in line for something.
Yes, the key is that you have to do it consistently. So meditation has the potential to confer a host of benefits, but only if you actually do the practice regularly and you start to build the skill and then start to apply it in your life.
Is there a best time of day to meditate?
The best time of day is the time that you're going to do it. It's really about building the habit.
So it doesn't matter morning or night. It doesn't matter. It's just that you're consistent and that you do it every day.
Exactly.
With career success, which is our topic, you're less stressed, you're more focused. Is there anything else what are some of the other benefits?
You're more productive, potentially. There are quite a number of studies that demonstrate an increase in productivity through meditation. And that's one of the things that I experienced myself. So when I first began to meditate, I was always very distracted when I was in a room with a lot of people, and it was really hard to work. And one day I was doing a long format document, and all of a sudden I realized that I'd gotten to the end and it only took me 45 minutes. And in the past, like every person, every sound would pull my attention. And in meditation, that practice that I described where your thoughts wander, you then notice and you choose to return to a neutral object can be really effectively applied in your workplace. So most of the time while we're doing something, writing documents, etc., our mind wanders elsewhere. And it's our choice whether we follow that wandering mind to Facebook, to our email for the 17th time, to the coffee maker, or just to a flight of fancy, or we actually choose to notice that we've wandered and return. And when you're able to actually observe what goes on in your mind, you're very easily then able to say, hey, my mind's wandering, come on back. back to my work, back to my work. And so it can make you extremely productive and efficient because you can very easily discern your distractions from the thing that you want to be doing, your focused, productive attention.
So you're watching yourself in a way.
Yes, and you're training yourself to watch yourself in this very particular way that makes it very easy to say, like, nope, that's a distraction, come on back. That's a distraction, come on back.
And in my own experience, I know that it takes a lot of practice, and some days I have more success than others.
For sure. We are humans. And actually part of the meditation skill is also being able to recognize those days when you're having more success than others, and to be able to then give yourself a different set of tools or skills or love or attention in those days when you're not totally on. So you're not just going through the world being like, why isn't everything working today? You can have a sense of self-observation to understand the process that led you to this point and how to get yourself out of it.
Right, because sometimes I'll sit there for 20 minutes on my little meditation pillow and it's just not working. And I'll say to myself, well, at least I showed up.
Yep. Humans are humans, and that is okay. And another quality that you cultivate in the practice of meditation is non-judgment. So in a career environment, we're often A, feeling super judged all the time, and it's very stressful, or B, very judgmental ourselves and very judgmental of our own work, worried that we're going to be critiqued badly. One of the things that you cultivate in meditation is non-judgment. So something doesn't work out, you say, that's okay, let it go, come back the next time. That's okay, let it go, come back the next time. And this cultivation of non-judgment in a workplace environment, even in really stressful, cutthroat ones, really serves to take the pressure off and to allow a sense of compassion and grace for oneself and others around you, which really allows you to flourish and work more effectively.
Are there physical benefits as well? I mean, obviously stress reduction, but are there other studies that have shown physical benefits?
So there's a really cool study out of the Partners Healthcare System. So that's the Boston hospitals like Mass General Hospital that we've all heard of. And there they took 4,400 people and they taught them a relaxation response course, basically yoga and meditation. And then they looked at their healthcare utilization the following year. And what they saw was a 46% decrease in healthcare use a year after an 8-week course of meditation yoga.
Good heavens.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. So you also talk about, showing up at the workplace, absenteeism, sick days, sick leave. Meditation is the opportunity to alleviate a lot of that.
Stress reduction, better focus, the ability to not get distracted, and less sick time.
Potentially.
It sounds amazing. How did you get into this? Can you tell us, Ariel, how you did?
Sure.
Yeah.
So my own background was neuroscience and psychotherapy. And as a neuroscientist, I knew all the literature on meditation. As a psychotherapist at the time, I was teaching my patients to meditate, and I sucked at meditation myself. I would teach them to do it, and I was the kind of person whose brain bounced all over the place, and I'm like, I can't do this. And I started to work with two of my friends, Trevor and Chris, and we began founding a company called Muse, and we make a device called Muse, the brain sensing headband, that gives you real-time feedback on your brain during meditation. And so it was through the process of building this tool to teach you to meditate. It tracks your brain while you meditate and gives you real-time feedback so that you know when you're focused and when your mind is wandering. It was through that process that I actually learned to meditate. And now, many years later, meditation is a deep, deep part of my life. Both meditating with Muse in a basic focused attention practice, and now the dozens of other techniques that I've had the joy of being able to explore and try and see the benefits of.
And so and you began meditating way back when, you said. Before all of that, you were doing it, but you sucked at it. What drew you to start doing it in the first place?
So I was always fascinated with it because I was fascinated with the brain. I was fascinated with ways that you could improve yourself and shift your perspective. And then as a psychotherapist, it was a frontline approach for a lot of the issues that I would see in my office. So as a therapist, it's something that you are trained to use. But it was really difficult to use and implement because I'd be teaching my patients. They'd go home. They'd rarely do it because they had the same experience I did. They sat down, their brain bounced all over the place, and they got frustrated. And so I was really drawn to try to find a solution to make meditation better, along with my colleagues.
Well, that's an interesting development then, that you went on to develop a device.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Sure. So Muse, the brain sensing headband, is a wearable gadget. So just like a Fitbit tracks your steps and makes that process tangible and visible so you're motivated and engaged in it, Muse sits on your forehead, just like a little headband, and it tracks your brain during meditation. So for everybody who doesn't really know what's going on in their mind or what they're supposed to do, Muse kind of solves that problem. And what it does is it translates your focused attention into sound. And the metaphor we use is your mind is like the weather. So when your brain is thinking, distracted, bouncing all over the place, you actually hear it as stormy. And as you bring yourself to quiet, focused attention, it can quiet the storm. And then after the fact, you get charts and graphs, so you see what your brain was doing. You get scores. There's a motivational architecture that keeps you coming back and meditating day after day after day. And it's super effective. Hundreds of thousands of people use it regularly.
Sounds like a game in some ways.
Yeah, there's a gamification aspect of it.
Wow, that's quite something. I'm interested in that. So do you have any stories about people's lives being changed after taking on a meditation practice?
So many of them. And they go from, the simple ones. I'm a mom, so this resonates with me. There was a woman who was telling me about her practice about 2 weeks in using Muse. And she said that she was in the park with her kid, with her 2-year-old. And it should have been the most glorious moment of her life, but she realized that she was thinking about the grocery list and what she was going to do later and not there with her kid. And until she started meditating, she didn't realize that every time she was with her child, she just wasn't with him. She was just thinking about something else. And she now had the opportunity to see what her thoughts were doing, let them go, and choose to actually be there with the person in front of her. There's lots of stories around sleep, how it helps people potentially sleep more effectively. I've heard stories about people who had to take time off work and they were on leave for illness or mental illness, and meditation became the thing that helped them come back to their workplace. We actually implement it in workplaces, and even was just doing a workplace training with a big radio station a few weeks ago. And in the first few weeks of meditating, I was hearing stories like people were no longer yelling at their kids at home. They felt more calm. They were, again, sleep is often a big one that I hear come up, able to sleep more effectively, able to feel like they could manage the chaos of the day more effectively, feel like they were able to be in a meeting and not feel frustrated or anxious or scared about speaking up. They're able to manage their colleagues' reactions more effectively. So it's powerful, powerful stuff. It's super simple, but also super powerful.
And I like the idea of sleep, because sometimes I'll struggle with insomnia, and the mind starts, oh, I'm not sleeping and I only have so many more hours left. Oh, I'm not sleeping. I have, now I have fewer hours left. And so that's attractive to me too.
Let go of the thoughts, come back to the breath and the body. It's very simple. It can be very hard to do, but very simple.
That's right. It sounds easy.
Until your mind is racing at 3 a.m.
That's right. Well, where can people find out more about you and about Muse?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Ariel's Musings, and you can find out more about Muse at choosemuse.com.
And that would be MUSE, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have a last piece of advice for the listener?
Yes. The frustration, the stress, the discomfort that you feel in your life is the result of the thoughts that you have in your head. So the sensations that you feel in your body are triggered by the thoughts that you have in your mind. And a lot of the time, those thoughts are not reflecting reality. It might feel like it's real because we feel these things in our body, therefore we think it must be true, but it's not actually true. And so when you take the time to start shifting the relationship to the thoughts in your head, being able to see what they are, being able to dismiss the ones that are not helpful, you have the opportunity to significantly change the experience of how you are in this world and what it feels to be in this life, feels like to be in this life.
So I could change the title from your key to career success to just your key to a more excellent life in general.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Ariel, for your time and this really important information. I think this will be greatly appreciated by the Careers by Jen listener.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Wasn't that fun? Now, full disclosure, I had not heard of Muse until I got approached to do this interview and until we actually spoke in the conversation that you just heard. Since then, Ariel has sent me a Muse to try out, and I have to say, it's pretty darn fun. I've only had it for a few days. I just got it at the beginning of this week, and already I can see how it can help to really focus and train the brain to be calm. Now, I'm not an affiliate of this product. I don't get anything for talking about it. But as a meditator already, I thought I'd share that my experience with using one of these little headbands so far is a great one. Now, if you would like to support our podcast and help me to bring on more amazing guests like Ariel Garten, please consider becoming a patron of the show. You can do so for as little as $1 a month by visiting our careersbyjen.com website and clicking on support at the top of the page. Many thanks, friends, for spending time with me here today. Please know that you are appreciated. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.